Hi friends, all for art and art for all. If you're into the doodles, I wanted to show you a couple extra Sharpies. This one's a Sharpie chisel tip, and it has a tip that has kind of a flat edge. And then the regular Sharpie you're familiar with is a fine point Sharpie, and this is a super Sharpie. So I'm going to go ahead and make my square with a super Sharpie. And we're gonna do, it looks like my super Sharpie is losing some juice. Look at that. I've only been working with this for a couple of weeks. So let me go in with my chisel tip Sharpie and see if I can clean that up. Yeah, there we go. Now, depending on how I hold this, I can either get a fine line or I can get a really thick line. So I'll use that line in my doodle. But that's the pen I'm working with. So we're gonna do some wavy. Another word for this is sinuous, because this looks like snake-like. So I'm going to start with a curve up here, and then that curve is going to have another little friend. And this guy's going to get contour lines. It's going to get round bands around it. So I'm going to try to make some striping around this that looks slightly rounded. And then I decided to maybe make one side darker to add some variety to my line. Now I'm going to make another wavy line. A sinuous line would be maybe a new vocabulary word for you. Something is sinuous if it looks snake-like and goes back and forth. So now I'm going to add these rounded contour lines and make this look like a worm. And there's actually even a word for that, vermiform. Vermiculture would be if you kept worms. This looks a lot like earthworms. Vermiculture would be for people that keep earthworms. And I'm going to make a darker line on one side. But I've got a really fast marker to do that. And again, I made it thicker on one side there. Let you kind of take a look at this guy building. And I'm going to do another wavy line here. And I just decided to match the wave. I could wave in different directions, but all my waves are pretty parallel to each other, kind of going side by side. And coming in with my rounded contour lines on my vermiform shapes, my very worm-like shapes. And then to give it some variety, a thicker line. You might have to go in with more than one line to get that. And then this was maybe one more sticking up. So then all I did was I put some what we call stippling. So stippling are dots that are used for shading. And so I'm going to put the dots farther apart on the light side of my worm forms. So farther apart on the light side. And then I'm going to make dots that are closer together near this dark side. So I'm putting my dots, I just kind of walk back and forth. It's kind of like I'm walking up and down. Try not to let them touch too much, because then I got to go back and fill in. So I feel like I'm just kind of I'm going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I can fill in between. So a little bit closer together nearest my dark line. Some stippling. Some stippling. That's what this type of shading is called. And then look for places that look like they could have another dot. Even a little bit darker near the dark line. maybe a little bit denser. So I'm changing the density, how close together the dots are changes the density. Density is a neat word. It's also used a lot in science. I think I'm shaking my camera a lot with this. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not making you dizzy. I just realized I wasn't watching what it did to the camera. So very sorry. I'm going to hold it still more now. Hopefully you don't get seasick watching this one. So there you go. You can add some color real quick. Thought I would do some blue, green, and some purple on the darker side of my worm. Maybe do a dark purple. That's a little too dark to put right next to it. I changed my mind. So I'm just going to have a little dark kind of hanging out there, and then something where maybe I can see the black. Sorry, I was shaking my camera so much on this one. And maybe do this where I leave some white on purpose. Leave a little white edge on purpose. And then there you go. You can kind of fill in any color back there. So all for art and art for all.